From the Lower Colorado River Authority, this is Wavelength. Wavelength is produced to inform you, the employees of LCRA, on those issues and events that affect all of us. It's our way to ensure that all of us at LCRA are on the same wavelength.
The rain began falling May 29th, and by the time it let up, nearly 2 weeks later, more than 12 inches of rain had fallen on many parts of the Colorado's watershed. And until June 13th, most of central Texas would live under a continual flash flood watch.
Flash flood watch in effect through this morning. A severe thunderstorm watch in effect until noon.
With the ground saturated, normally quiet streams were turned into raging torrents, and even Austin's town lake had the markings of an untamed river. As the rains continued to fall and area creeks and rivers were on the rise, a team of LCRA water experts was assembling at the control center in an effort to pass this water safely through the system.
And Fredericksburg will probably start getting there? No.
The HydroNet system was developed 5 years ago as a tool to monitor upstream flows into the lakes. Information from 35 stations is fed into a central computer, allowing for timely decisions to be made on water releases.
Everything that we're looking at does eventually feed into the Colorado, but what we try to do is get enough warning so that we can operate the lakes more efficiently. If we can generate more electricity, then we've benefited LCRA and its customers.
By June 3rd, the water level at Lake Travis had risen to 685, and for the first time in 6 years, 3 floodgates were opened. Gates at Buchanan, Wirtz, Starkey, and Tom Miller were also opened, and all the plants were generating around the clock. And on June 13th, the biggest wave hit the system when 2.5 inches of rain pounded the hill country and brought Travis up to just shy of 694, the highest since 1957. That put more than a dozen homes near Hearst Harbor underwater and forced the opening of a 4th gate.
There are a lot of people that built below, say, 693 or 695. And, of course, the elevation this time got up to 693.6. So there were a lot of people and a lot of marinas that had facilities that were flooded. But by and large, most people have learned that the lake will get up there, and it did this time.
Information on rising lake levels and gate openings led area newscasts for nearly a week, and hundreds of people gathered to take in a view of the rushing water. But some people literally got caught up in the rush of the water. 2 men were rescued below Longhorn Dam after a tubing accident, and these 2 boaters had to be plucked from Tom Miller Dam after their boat was sucked through the floodgates. Luckily, the men grabbed the chains on the bottom of the gate and hung on till help arrived. Further downstream, on a sharp bend in the river, the force of the water washed away nearly 20 feet of bank, taking away a small cabin with it. High water caused erosion problems downstream all the way to Bay City. But overall, the loss of property was kept to a minimum along the Colorado, and there were no fatalities. And although the last 2 weeks are a reminder that the river can still turn wild, it's still a far cry from the uncontrollable floods that occurred before the dams were built.
At the June meeting, the Board of Directors unanimously approved a $316 million budget for FY 87-88. $185 million is set aside for operation and maintenance, while another $131 million has been allocated for capital additions. The budget goes into effect July 1st. LCRA may be one step closer to settling its long-standing dispute with the City of Austin over water treatment plant number 4. General Manager David Freeman offered the compromise at a news conference and said it's time to resolve the controversy once and for all.
The idea here is to view the water treatment plant number 4 as a regional plant in which the LCRA and the City of Austin would be partners. Austin would go ahead with the construction according to their own design, and Austin could be the operator of the plant. But LCRA would have the option to purchase up to 50% of the plant.
If accepted, the proposal would not only settle the issue of WTP number 4, but would also end the dispute over water rights in the Highland Lakes, restoring a positive working relationship between the city and LCRA.
We enjoy and treasure a good partnership with Austin, and we just feel that we could move from electric power to water in that way to the benefit of all the people.
Thousands of people do business with LCRA each year, so to familiarize vendors with LCRA procedures, LCRA held its first annual Vendors and Contractors meeting last month. Nearly 1,200 vendors jammed the Wyndham Hotel June 10th to listen to guidelines of how to do business with LCRA.
The whole idea here is just to develop a much better and closer working relationship with all our suppliers.
Many of the business people attended the seminar to learn how a new computer process will notify them of upcoming bid items. In addition, they learned the do's and don'ts of soliciting business at LCRA.
We just like to find what it takes to do business with the LCRA. We'd like to know who the people are to contact, what the procedures are, and so on.
Businesses wanting to sell to LCRA are encouraged to file an application with the purchasing department to be placed on the qualified bidders list. LCRA recognized 4 area organizations for their exceptional work towards improving the environment. Bess Blanton of Cuero, Clear Clean Colorado River Association, Garwood Irrigation, and the Texas Conservation Foundation all received plaques at a banquet held June 17. 5 individuals and groups also received certificates of achievements for environmental work in 1986.
This month on Straight from the Top, Dudley Pylan spends a few moments with General Manager Dave Freeman talking about what's on his mind.
Thank you for allowing me to reappear on Wavelength. We've just gone through the June board session, and several of the items that have been on that board session are key to LCRA. One of them in particular is the FPP fueling resolution that was passed by the board. Can you give us your presentation on what that resolution included?
Well, sure. I think we did get some guidance for the board. I wouldn't say that there were any decisions made so much as some guidance on how we should proceed with what's essentially a continuation of what we're doing now. The discussion pointed out that we are able to buy Western coal delivered at the plant at a price that would at least be a wash and most likely some savings over the Cummings Creek lignite, so that there is not a real urgent rush to start the mine. The other side of it is that we do want to start the mine someday in the future if we can't find any better lignite, because the board's policy is firm is that we want to move to lignite. So what the discussion brought out is that the Camp Swift lignite, which we've known all along, is a higher BTU and easier to mine lignite. So we're going to explore the Camp Swift lignite during the next year. The government has indicated that it is interested in leasing it, and we'll see whether we can obtain it and how far we can go. In the meantime, we'll continue the preparations to file for a permit for Cummings Creek, but there's no decision to actually file the permit. And we will also be looking at Western coal and to see what price we could buy it for, say if we wanted to stay with it for 5 or 6 years. But the entire discussion was based on the fact that we're going to bring lignite in. It's just a question of when, and basically to see if there's anything better than the Cummings Creek lignite in terms of costs. And we also are very concerned about the environment, and there's some environmental questions about the aquifer below the Camp Swift lignite. we think we can mine it in a shallow way that won't impinge on that. But those are all things to be explored. So basically, we're going to continue to perfect the mine plan, and we've made a lot of progress at Cummings Creek in the last year in coming up with a better mine plan and explore, firmer bids from the contractors, get the mystery out of the conveyor belt, and the board authorized a working visit over to Australia to look at a comparable facility that's in place. So we're just going to continue to do our homework on the Cummings Creek project and try to be in position so that if a year from now when the board reviews it again, they want to go ahead and file for the permit, we can, or if it looks like that the Camp Swift lignite is obtainable, it looks like that might be an alternative. In the meantime, we'll look forward to burning Western coal the first year or two or three of Units 3's operation, and we figure we'll save money in doing so and stretch out the life of the Cummings Creek lignite on into the next century when we know it will be economical compared to everybody's projection of what's going to happen to fuel prices. We don't want to rely on Western coal for the long term unless something happens that we can't foresee. Right now we want to shift to either Cummings Creek or Camp Swift lignite, but we're not in any all-fired hurry because all the estimates are that the Western coal prices are going to stay economical into the mid-90s. But nobody knows for sure, so we're going to go forward with perfecting our mine plan, and that's a long-winded version of the resolution.
The second major issue another major issue that was discussed during the June board session and was finalized was the matter of the budget for 1988, the fiscal year 88 budget, both the construction and operation maintenance. I know that's kept a lot of people in turmoil for a long period of time. Can you tell us how that came out?
Yeah, I think all that turmoil paid off. There was a lot of fear and apprehension when we laid down the question, what would happen if we had a 15% cut? And we all had to do a lot of homework, and I've been led to believe that we've all learned a whole lot more about our organizations and our strengths and weaknesses. What it did is it gave me the ammunition to defend the budget, and as a result of that real hard-hitting budget process, we got our budget through without any board changes. We have achieved a 3% overall reduction in person power, but we're going to achieve most of that reduction through increased efficiencies and through not filling vacant jobs and through the early retirement program. I'm not saying that every last human being in the organization will always have the job they've got. I mean, that kind of security is just not available anywhere in this world, and it's not even healthy. I think we need to feel that we've got to produce in order to get promotions and keep our jobs. But I'm proud of the fact that compared to almost any organization in Texas today, we've come out real well, and we're squeezing out 49 positions, some of which are unfilled, some of which will come about through attrition, and some through the early retirement program. But the main thing is that the board, I think, is persuaded that we are a lean and efficient organization, and we got increases in the areas where we needed increases, and we've gotten the funding for things from computer-assisted drafting to another crew to maintain our lines. And I think that the board understands that we are not just another state agency with half the people goofing off. We've got a very hard-working crew of people, and everybody puts out and produces, and I think now we've got the evidence to prove that. So I know the budget process was a pain, and I won't say where, but I think it paid off.
Mr. Freeman, there seems to be a feeling nowadays that we're getting away from that close-knit family that we used to be at LCRA. And I wanted to ask you what your feeling was about that.
Yeah, I guess my reaction is, frankly, I feel a little sad hear that, because I'd like to think of this organization as a family, and there's nothing that's happened that I know of in terms of people being forced to leave or anything like that that would cause that family feeling to disappear. There have been a lot of rumors, but if you look at the facts, we've been a very healthy, moderately growing organization. Now, if we lived in a dream world and reality is coming in, that might be a good thing. The dream world is that we're living in isolation and that we're not affected by what happens in the rest of the world. We are. We have new directors coming on. We have 8 new directors coming. It's a changing world, and the whole utility industry is subject to change. But I probably am as compassionate and as human being oriented a general manager as you're going to get. I don't have any desire to run anybody off or to destroy the family environment, and I don't think I've done anything to cause that. I guess your question your question leaves me with a certain sadness, because we need to talk together to figure out what we can do to restore that feeling, because I don't know of any reason why it shouldn't still exist.
I don't know that it's as much just directly from you, Mr. Freeman, as it is just the changes that LCR is going through.
But I think that we're all adults and we're not children, and I think if we look at the changes on the merits, we shouldn't have the feeling that the family's being destroyed. It's perhaps that the family's growing up. And as there is a certain different feeling between youth and teenagers and adults, and I think that we've had to change, to take on the water responsibilities, to take on the conservation responsibilities. We're not going to build as many power plants because it's cheaper to put in load management devices in homes, and the load growth is slowing down. That shouldn't destroy the family feeling. I think that everybody in this organization is capable of doing the jobs that they're doing. We just went through a tough budget process, and hell, everybody passed. So it just seems to me that we ought to restore our faith in ourselves and recognize that there ain't no boogeyman around the corner. I think public service, and that's what this is, ought to be a joyous thing. I have been in an LCRA type organization most of my life. TVA is a sort of a big brother of LCRA. And I've enjoyed my work, and I feel like we're doing as much good here as any organization in the country is doing. And I think there is a real spirit of camaraderie, and I'd like to foster it. And maybe we just need to talk more and pay less attention to the rumors.
Mr. Freeman, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Remember the excitement of a school day field trip? These students from Kyle Elementary are about to tour Mansfield Dam at Lake Travis. But there is something very special about this tour. It's the tour guides.
If we can break this down into 5 groups, and
these men are the first volunteers for a new program at LCRA called the Golden Tours Program. The idea is to get retired employees to conduct tours at LCRA dams and to draw on their experience and knowledge about the authority. They are paid for their services, but the reward they receive seems to go far beyond money.
The way we look at the LCRA, we're very proud of it, and proud of the people that are now associated with the LCRA. We have been there, we try to do our share, and now we want people to know what the people are doing with the LCRA. Which is a great organization, and we're proud of it today, just as we were when we worked there.
I just think what the LCRA does is good, and I like to preach about them, barbershops and where else, because they've been very nice to me, and we get along with the general public very well, and so I enjoy telling people more about this company.
I think that if somehow the older people can pass on their knowledge to the younger ones, I know you can do that through books, but I guess most people don't write books, and this way is one way to do that.
You're seeing, as you all can tell, a very small
cart of a gigantic tooth.
Plans are to expand the program to include other LCRA facilities such as Sim Gideon and Fayette power plants. If you know of anyone who may be interested in the Golden Tours program, call Sylvia Sines at the LCRA Public Information Department.